Mr. Omori Dogeware, a legal practitioner, still with us right here in our Lagos studio. Thank you for staying with us. A long day, it is turning to be a long morning now.
Yes.
And also joining us virtually is Dr. Michael Akitomi. Is the founder of MADE Foundation. Is also a data analyst and a medical doctor. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on our election coverage.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right. Let me start with Mr. Dogeware. I mean, we the people have come out to vote, or at least the people that came out to vote and were accredited, and eventually barring others who couldn't vote, the other polling units. And, you know, the conversation we're having earlier focused on why we vote the way we vote. And we've seen that, yes, we had challenges, but ultimately this is an election that is meant to reflect the will of the people. We can talk about the litigations afterwards, but still staying with the process. Hearing the civil society give their own ratings, especially because they have worked with INEC in the build-up to this, in coming up with the Electoral Act. They were actually key to this. I remember Mr. Nwagu actually giving a list of some of the pluses. I wonder for you, in terms of the stakeholders working together, would you rate it as a process that actually saw them working together well enough? Because I imagine that is where the success or otherwise of this process rises and falls.
Well, the issue is, what's the end result? We can work together, and if at the end of the day we don't achieve the objective for which we have come together, is there really a pass mark? The commendation really should go to both parties, but to the extent that they have been able to coexist, they've been able to impact or influence each other, right? So I recall the speaker from Abuja, don't really remember his name.
Mr. Nwagu.
Yes, you know, he said that agencies of government have remained at a combative response angle, where they are defensive, combative, and never really wanting to take feedback, you know, as they should. You know, but INEC, you know, has really, I wouldn't say they have been that way. You know, it's been share your feedback, okay, we work on it. If anything, the timely resumption, the ease of accreditation and voting at the governorship showed that they took a few lessons from the presidential elections, and maybe they are working a lot more closely with the civil society. But like I said, at the end of the day, this is 4:48 a.m. Not one state has concluded its process. Nobody's flying to Abuja now, right? From the small states to the big states, they are still bandying stories. IREV is not doing fantastically well. Issues of electoral violence permeate the entire country. So at the end of the day, we don't have a process that we can beat our chest to say, yes, we have done well. At best, the civil societies remain at the angle of mounting the required pressure on INEC to do what they need to do. Just listening to the issue of people with disabilities, you know, it just crossed my mind, and I just thought about it, that my polling unit where I voted, anybody on a wheelchair would have to be lifted, right? It doesn't appear to be a plan for such persons. If you are not assisted, there's no system in place, you know, for that. And I'm sure this must have been something that was thought of at the onset. But if we go back to the law, and we go back to the act, and we go back to the guidelines, and we compare what has happened with the guidelines, we will still see some lapse that show that there's room for more. I believe that the Electoral Act as it is has had a good run, but now they need to go back and look at it again.
That's for the 10th Assembly, I imagine. But, well, the 9th Assembly actually still has some... well, I doubt if anything will be done to that
they need to
now.
look at it again. They need to rework some of the things. There's so much ambiguity. And it is these ambiguities that are allowing a lot of these lacunas that are leading us in local parlance, that are taking us where we don't know.
So they're exploited. Those lacunas you think are being exploited right now?
Of course. So I tell you, for instance, we have a lot on electronic transmission of results. We're so big on it, But if you really look at it, the Electoral Act itself does not expressly say you must transmit electronically.
It gives INEC
can provide guidelines. The guidelines provided by INEC are within their purview.
But that has been tested in court. The Lagos court decided on it, I think Labour Party, and I think also in, is it Akwa Ibom or Cross River State? There was a decision that said, well, INEC must stick to the guideline that says they would upload the results using the PVAS electronically.
That guideline is not part of the Electoral Act. That guideline is just like your working document prepared in-house for the purpose of discharging the verdict.
It doesn't mean it's not binding. I think it even spells the Electoral Act, it spells it out even more explicitly.
Yes, but it allows them the leeway to provide the framework for adhering to the provisions of the Electoral Act. And if you even look at the section of the part of the guideline that talks about electronic transmission, it allows them to transmit electronically or take to the collation center. It is the aspect of taking the results to the collation center that is sacrosanct. And we have seen from the elections that, in fact, some of the polling units said at the beginning, before elections, that look, we are not transmitting, we cannot transmit. So that clearly shows that some of the things that we are jumping and shouting about as the benefits of this act may not necessarily be as cast in stone as we think.
Okay. Just a moment. Let's touch base with Dr. Akitomi. He joins us from Delaware in the United States. I know lots of Nigerians in the diaspora are keenly watching this election. Some as just Nigerian citizens. For some, they have interests, as they say. Some people have a dog in the race. And I wonder for you, I haven't seen what played out during the presidential election, perhaps expectations not met, then trying to build up to this one again. And now this is where we're at. Looks like IREV is working, maybe not as fast as a lot of people expected. The reports of violence we saw in some areas in Lagos, it's important again to get a holistic report of the conduct of elections across the country. But what's your perception? What's your reading of the process so far from where you are at?
Kayode, thank you once again for having me. Indeed, there's improvement compared to what happened during the presidential election, where the electoral materials didn't get to where they were supposed to get to. INEC was able to work towards that and achieve that. We didn't have many of that cases this period. However, the whole process to look cumbersome, and like the earlier speaker said, until we do a total overhaul to make it smooth. And this span from taking the whole issue of using ballot paper and all that, taking it away, that will really relieve INEC of the burden of logistics and so many other things. Of course, there are different angles to it, but so far so good. We didn't have any issues of ballot boxes or election materials getting to somewhere very late, unlike what we recorded during the presidential election. But there are pockets of violence and ballot board snatches and all that, which by any standard, it is awful, it is unacceptable, and I think this is beyond INEC anyway. It is beyond INEC. I think INEC will have to work in collaboration with the security agencies and then even the people, the Nigerian people, to make sure that stuff like this did not occur in the nearest future.
All right, Mr. Akitomi. So, looking at the whole process now, and how we're able to outsource some things that we do here, and looking at the whole election process, we know some people are not satisfied with the process and all that's happened today with the with violence and all of that. Do you think we need to, because you did talk about partnerships with INEC there, do you think it's time we outsource our whole election process in a way that we make the process easier for the people? Where can we go? Where should we go to to actually make this process easy? How far can we go?
All right, thank you for the question. The election process in Nigeria, as far as the peculiarity of our environment is concerned, everything that happened during this both presidential election and this gubernatorial elections, I will tell you that none of it is alarming to me. None of it is unexpected, because if you look at it, putting into consideration the peculiarity of our environment and the idea of still using ballot boxes and paper and all that, it is things like this are bound to happen. Now, what is the way forward? Everything that happened now, I think INEC will need to go back to the drawing board and iron things out and probably meet with the major stakeholders and make sure that we forge ahead from here. And what are my suggestions? Number one, for example, now let's look at the logistic part of it. I don't see INEC delivering the demand or the requirement for elections a day before elections to every part of the country. I think this is things they can contract out to the logistic I don't want to mention them, but we have some logistic companies that they have reputation, and they will also go a long way to defend that reputation, delivering this to the nook and cranny of the country. That's number one. Number two, if we actually want to achieve what we are yearning, that's free and fair elections, the issue of ballot boxes should be taken away. As compared to what we do in the United States now, all we have to do is just go to a polling unit where there's an electoral counting machine, like ATM machine, and contemporaneously, when you vote, it is already recorded on server. This is different from identification or verification of voters. This is after when you get to the polls, after you've been verified that okay, you are capable or eligible to vote, the next thing is for you to just go to this machine and scroll up and pick whoever you are voting at. And whoever you vote for, immediately in real time is recorded already. People or INEC officials do not need to carry results from one point to another that will give room for unnecessary interventions or interceptions. So that one also is very important. If INEC can probably graduate to that level whereby people will vote electronically, that will really, really be great. Then this issue of we have to wait before during election period before people are being registered and they want to get their voters card. Psychologically, this will overweigh INEC officials. Either you like it or not, is part of the problem because they have too much burden on themselves. The more importantly, I don't see INEC organizing election throughout the country at the same time. Let individual states organize let INEC of individual states organize their election at different points. And what do we stand to achieve from this? Number one, the resources that the federal government will have to deploy, ranging from the police to the military to other paramilitary, agencies will be minimal and will be adequate rather. Because, for example, now let's imagine the federal government is deploying half of the our police people to Lagos State as for example now. There will be adequate police on ground to monitor everything that is going on. If anybody or by any chance want to mess up or do something very, very fishy, it can easily be arrested. But what you want to do, what will a woman police, a woman police, or even a man, manning just one police where you have hundreds of people, what do you expect such police to do? If whatever that is happening, it will rather save his life or her life than intervention. But when different states hold their elections on different occasions, I expect that there will be adequate resources, adequate time, adequate deployment of police and security to see the election through. So these are things that INEC need to put into consideration afterward and moving forward. Thank you.
Oh, very well. I mean, it's good you made mention of some of these things. You're calling for the introduction of more technology. So I'm thinking, how would you rate the BVAS? We had issues, during the presidential elections, but this time around, how would you say everything played? What were the reports you got? What were the stories you heard? About the BVAS?
Well, most times I don't like to base my stories on what I see on social media alone. And the reason being that social media is news, negative news are easily to fly. However, we cannot deny the fact that there are situations, there are cases whereby people have been suppressed, voters have been suppressed, there are situations whereby people have been disenfranchised from voting, and these are things that is uncalled for and is awful, and it is bad and unacceptable by any standard. However, we've seen other parts of the country that did well. For example, now in Ondo State, because I'm from Ondo State and I followed the election all through, was peaceful, everything went the way expected, and Ogun State too was peaceful comparatively. Do you understand? Unlike Lagos, where we have some pockets of violences, however, we will not judge the exercise entirely on that. But like I said, there's always room for improvement. As we keep living, we keep learning every day.
Mr. Akitomi, I was actually speaking about, the infusion of technology, which, we've already, implemented. But you are saying, or you are suggesting that, we do more than we have done. And of course, during the last elections, we know what happened with the BVAS, there were issues here and there, and people were already thinking, was INEC hacked? Was the security system breached? Even though the minister came out and said, oh, there were about 12.9 million, cyber attacks, during the election. So if we are to deploy more technology, considering the fact that what happened with the BVAS happened, in the previous elections, how cyber secure are we, to withstand any form of cyber attack, when we deploy more technology than we already have, in future elections?
You see, for every project we want to execute, there's always feasibility studies. INEC failed in that part, no doubt. However, there are things you can't control the whole thing. But there's a way that you can carry out your your project in such a way that even if there's going to be any itch or problem, you're still going to score 90 or 95%. You're still going to record 95% success. Now, as regards the BVAS, if you look at the BVAS, is just for people. Number one is for verification and transmission of results, scanning of results to the server immediately. However, people still go around and thumbprint on the paper. These paper are being hijacked by some hoodlums and all of that. How do we avoid that? Let's do a total overhaul. Let us introduce technology that will save people, that will save INEC stress and cumbersome logistics, and also deliver an effective result. And how do I mean? I cited an example the other time. In the United States, there are machines like ATM machines that you install. It can't carry heat. You cannot. Now imagine somebody coming around and wants to carry ATM machine. That is almost impossible. And for every polling booth, and because of the nature of that, you don't have to put these machines everywhere, unlike where we have different ballot boxes everywhere. Do you understand? So people just drive there and do whatever we want to and vote, get verified and vote. And once you are voting, electronically, it's been transmitted to the server. Because this is done here, it can be achieved anywhere if we work towards it. I'm putting into consideration the amount of money the federal government is also investing into this. So I believe it can be, it's achievable. It's very possible.
I have to say that I share your optimism, but let me just bring the conversation into the studio here, Mr. Omori. Deploying more technology, considering what happened, and I want to believe that the INEC servers. Well, if you know how servers work, you definitely cannot put all of your eggs, generally, in fact, in one basket. So I want to believe, they're everywhere. Domiciled in different places just in case of, when stuff happens. But I'm thinking, if moving forward we need to deploy more technology, like you said, what way should we be looking at deploying these technologies?
So if you recall, during our earlier interview, I pointed out the fact that technology must be bespoke. You can't apply a watershed approach when determining what works, because what works for us in Nigeria may not work for them in the US, may not work in the UK. Internet connectivity remains a major challenge. Let's even leave the issue of the servers. Let's look at the workability of the devices across the 120,000 polling units. I like to say that Lagos, Port Harcourt, a few key cities, FCT, put us in a bubble, and we think that it's the same ease that we enjoy here that they enjoy in other areas that I wouldn't want to mention. But it's not that way. There are places where they are still battling between 2G and 3G, and all that. So whatever technology we want to scale to must be such that demystifies the need for internet connectivity. Right? So any technology that will leverage on some, a hybrid of the old telephones, the old type of telephones. For instance, you have bank transfers and you have USSD.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to tell ourselves the truth. Right? I kept saying when they were talking about transmission, I said, look, don't use Lagos as a yardstick. Use those places where internet comes, and everybody screams, oh, it's working now, yeah, quickly do what you want to do. And then how workable is that going to be? So whatever technology we want to deploy must be one that is bespoke, must be one that factors in our realities. Right? I'm a startup attorney. I advise a lot of startups in the tech space. And one of the things that I know is that innovation is a product of the problem of the contemporary environment. Right? So INEC needs to sit down.
I'm talking about the tech space now. What kind of conversations, are being had about, the beavers and IRA? What kind of conversations are the professionals there having?
Yeah, so what you have are pockets of conversations and criticisms, failures of the system. This could have been done better. It's like the football match, right? So when we are spectating, everybody knows, 10 ways Messi could have scored a better goal.
Right.
Right? But what should be done? Bring everybody into the room. INEC needs to look. Nigeria has one of the best talents in the world. The beavers is is an indigenous product, right? And yes, as far as voter accreditation is concerned, it has done quite well. The figures that were bandied, 80-something million people, at the end of the day, the actual voters were far less
Just
because Beavers was able
million.
to, yeah, so Beavers were able to cut off over 50 million people. So yes, it has done well. Maybe they need to scale, but this time bring more people into the table.
It should be dialogue.
Yes, and let's have a dialogue with the tech community, with the startup community, right? With the techpreneurs. Let them bring innovative ideas. Run a program. Have people bring ideas, and then let's see how there are pockets of elections that are coming up, right? So INEC already has the leeway of electronic transmission of results, in quotes, right? So around those leeway, you can always improve on the technology that you are deploying. But what you have on ground today does not factor in our current realities. Scaling to a more advanced technology is not the solution, right? I had also said that, look, electronic voting, we have come to a place where people should be able to vote electronically. In the NBA, for instance, we all vote in the comfort of our homes via our telephones. I think that...
Don't forget there were debates over the result of that election as well.
You will never have a perfect system. Right, you never have a perfect system. I'm not saying we should go that way, because again, we'll still be met with the challenges of even literacy related issues. But we must begin to move beyond just scaling for scaling's sake. Okay, yes, it's good to deploy technology. Deploy technology that you can use in your location. Right? If you travel abroad, for instance, there are electronic appliances that if you bring into this country, if you don't have a step down, you can't use them because they are not made for the current that we have.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I was taking a look at the cost, because I was thinking, they usually say, or some people believe that the solution to inadequate tech is more tech. And I'm thinking, so in countries where you have electronic voting machines, for example, what's the average cost? And I was just doing a quick calculation. I saw that, okay, let's say the US, $5,000 each for each. Let's imagine for all the polling units in Nigeria, 176,000. If you do the math, you come to about 668 billion naira just to purchase the $5,000 machine for 176,000 polling units. That's just the machines alone. We're not talking about paying or doing all of that. So I don't know if we can accommodate that in our budget, but in terms of the laws, we'll clearly need to be tweaking our laws to accommodate that as well.
Oh, yes. So INEC comes up with a budget every election cycle, defends that budget. But there's so much fixation on the human element, people, and that transition to technology is still shaky. And like I said, you need to first of all understand how best to work. What INEC is trying to do is assuage the concerns of people who have said it's time that you scale and use technology,
the elites,
while also remaining in their comfort zone of having their paperwork done. Now, going to the voting machines is not even a big deal. That can come with time. But even the beavers, do you know that the beavers can be modified? After accreditation, what? And it goes straight to system. You know that the beavers have been configured in a way that without internet access or any connectivity, all the data captured is automatically stored on a server. So if that can be done,
I'm sorry, without internet, I think it should retain it on the beavers till it gets connection and it uploads to a server.
Okay, so, but it can be altered. Whatever information that the beavers has taken cannot be altered. So why can't you have the same people who you have accredited
just vote immediately?
Just vote.
With the same finger sensor,
yes.
Right?
So as you take their photographs, verify their card, there's a column, and then they vote. Yes, you may still have your ballot papers because, you know, we have fixated so much on paper, right? But maybe that is reduced for those who...
And there's a cost for that paper, actually, because that's...
And it's a lot.
So you can eliminate that cost and put it somewhere else.
So you modify the beavers for people to be able to vote. You take your biometrics when you go to do your BVN.
Absolutely.
Right? Then they get those votes, and then there's a way of transmitting that, of having all the information, and it's clear. And then, you know, what you will now have will be there will be no ballot box for people to snatch.
Right.
So I mean, you know, talking about those fingerprints, you know, and all of that, our data management system, you know, in the country, like you said, you want to do your BVN, you have to do like biometrics. You want to, you know, get your passport. You know, there are so many things we do where you need to do biometrics, you know. So we have like tons of data that we've given over and over and over again. So if we're to harness all of this data, you know, and put it to good use, for instance, now elections, you know, at what cost would it come? And, you know, what's the ease, you know, that it would take for us to do this?
We already have so much data, like you said.
Yeah.
So the issue now is synchronization. And definitely obtaining data and synchronizing data, the cost will be an arm's length, right? What INEC needs to do is to sit down with NIMC. And it's easy if you're getting an NIN. Just the same way passports now are connected to your NIN. And without an NIN, you can't get an international passport. Right? While people are voting, applying for their voter's card, you know, what stopped INEC from merging with the NIN? Automatically, what that does is that it has your fingerprints.
Yeah.
And so while you're doing your BVAS accreditation, your fingerprints can be taken, you know. So it's important for them to now sit down and synchronize.
Just like plug in an API.
Yes. You know, synchronize data. Technology is beautiful when you know how to use it and manipulate it. Right? And it appears cumbersome when you seem to be learning it. Sit down with NIMC. Bring some tech bros and tech Cs to sit down and advise and give you something. We have tons of data. Nigeria is not lacking in data. The police registry, for instance, you go there when you want to travel and all that, your fingerprints, it's easy for them to verify. No matter the number of people, nobody goes there and they can't verify. Right? Why is that? So there's so many ways we can actually verify these things if these agencies, you know, but we like to work in silos in this country. You know, we like to do our thing. While an agency can help you and make your work easier if you sit with them and get, there must be time that those BVAS machines, as soon as you finish accrediting, the next point is vote, president, governorship, and then you're done.
Could it be that somehow, you know, corruption is playing into all of this and not allowing, you know, these agencies actually come together because maybe this one wants to make money from a process while the other one has their own jurisdiction where they want to make money?
I think it's the red tape effect. You know, that government bureaucracy. You know, that if you've ever had to do anything with the civil service, you know, you could, if you're a private sector person, you get very frustrated because they tell you, oh, you have to move from one table to the other, you know, and all that. So that still comes to play when you're dealing with agencies of government, right? And it's ego. A lot of them believe, INEC believe, we've got this thing sorted out, this is our forte. You know, we won't take instructions from you.
Right.
And so that becomes, and also even distrust among agencies of government. The Naira policy, if anything we have seen is that this Naira policy and all that, for instance, you know, showed how independently agencies of government are just doing what they are doing without a clear interface or even support So
interesting dimension.
Bigger issues keep coming up.
Absolutely. Let's go over to Dr. Akitomi. I know that, as I said, I mean, lots of Nigerians are watching with keen interest to see how this plays out. But I mean, we've talked a lot about our tech reality, the data component, and how we can actually make it better. Even made comparisons, perhaps to compare notes. But I'd like to look forward now, away from that, and just get your thoughts on this emerging, I don't know if it's to call it a third force, or the possibility of our political map going beyond two colors. And I wonder, is that a prospect that excites Nigerians in diaspora, particularly maybe you and maybe others you have spoken with, seeing the emergence of Labour Party, I mean, seeing what even NMPP has done. I know in other climes, getting that much votes might earn you some seats in the parliament, but I mean, this is a presidential system. So does that excite you, the possibilities that might come up on our political map?
Yes, it does excite me, and as a Nigerian citizen who actually long for development and progress for the country, and wanting us to get past this old style of government and want fresh air, fresh brains, fresh ideas, I'm kind of inclined to that. Of course, I'm not a fan of multi-parties, like where we have 16, 20-something parties, which is also one of our problems, because imagine the logistics the INEC has to incur just to make sure all the parties are well represented and carried along. But 2, 3, 4, which is okay. So the emergence of Labour Party and the NMPP is a great, if it does not do anything, at least it does one thing, which is giving our current leader an idea that, okay, things can change if we don't do well. These people cannot sit us. Nigerians cannot sit us if we don't sit tight. So that checkmate, that realization alone it goes a long way. So I am very much happy, and I think the diaspora people, Nigerians in diaspora, are also looking forward to something like that. And I just hope that the two other parties can, what we call it now, the NMPP and the LP, can maintain the momentum, so that and be smart enough by not allowing the fallout of APC or PDP, I mean, people that are no longer with them, join them and mess things up, where we'll go back to square one. So if the Labour Party can maintain the momentum, young Nigerians, youth, we have hope. We know that, okay, on this platform, we can be given the chance and the opportunity to come out and express ourselves and able to take the mantle of leadership and bring our home quota to the table.
We're due for a break in a couple of minutes, but I'd just like to get your view on this. It's something that comes up time and again. But the quantum of forex the Nigerians in diaspora actually send back home, billions of dollars yearly. Some have clamored that, hey, we need to have a say in this process. Can we vote, even if it's by mail or by technology, what have you? Some even actually traveled all the way down home to vote. I imagine those that came for the presidential have returned. What I don't know if you're part of that conversation, or would I call it a campaign now, to have Nigerians in diaspora voting. How close would you say you're at, maybe your conversation with representatives and all of that? Is that something you're looking forward to?
Yes, indeed. I'm looking forward to that state, but sincerely, that cannot be now. And why do I say that? Like our earlier discussion, the challenges we found out in our electoral process currently just the fact that, okay, there are two processes, two chances or too many chances for people to intervene, from the ballot box, from the paper team, from people snatching, and all that. And that's the reason why I clamor for, okay, let's do a total electronic voting, which requires verification, voting, and transmission of results all at the same time. Now, if we achieve that, we'll be able to what we call it, consolidate our policy and guidelines and INEC guidelines enough in such a way that, okay, people like us from diaspora, because there's no way we want to vote other than to just post our card. And when we post card, with the current situation in Nigeria, it's not guaranteed, because even the one people guide and they are all there to monitor, funny things still happen to them. How much more ads coming through the back door and all that. And if you and this is not to stay in America. However, if you remember the last election, one of the major problems they have, and where they thought there was a rigging, was through the posters, the voters that posted their their votes in, whereby it took them another extra days to count and all that. So I think as far as Nigeria is concerned, we are not there yet, except if there's a way they want us to vote electronically through phones or anything. Like I said, and like the gentleman said the other time, all these things we might be thinking is a big deal, but until you sit down with the investors, until you sit down with the stakeholders, and we discuss this out, sit down with the partners and we discuss this out, you realize that even everybody can even vote from the phone. Like, a device, electronic device, electronic voting device as small as a phone, and that will have its own inbuilt service and all that, and that will transmit almost immediately. But you don't know until you start talking about it, until you start thinking about it. Okay, this is what we want to do. So I believe in possibilities. I believe it's possible. But for now, putting into consideration what we have having currently, I don't think diaspora can voting by mail from diaspora would not be in one way abused. I doubt it if it's not going to be abused.
Joining us now is Mr. Kayode Begude, former candidate, Delaware State Insurance Commissioner under the Democratic Party in 2020. Great to have you join us.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm sure you've been following the conversation, and obviously, we've started the process now for governorship elections. From where you are now, what have you been hearing, and how do you see the whole process?
Yeah, thank you for that question or remark. So I would say it's quite unfortunate that Nigeria at this point, we still couldn't get it better. So as regards security, I listened to the Commissioner of Police in Lagos and to his remarks earlier on. He said something about the perpetrators of voters' fraud and those who stole the voters' box and some other things that they stole, that it is not the responsibility of the community, to act. But nobody respects the uniform men of Nigeria these days, and I will tell you why. When I look at the situation, we have the EFCC without any firearms, so no respect. We have the security, we have the police officers that are there, majority of them, about less than 90% of them, they have no firearms. We have other security people around, personnel, that they have no firearms. So there is no respect from even the hoodlums that wanted to perpetrate those acts. Even when it happened, nobody was able to do anything to them because they've appraised, they've analyzed, and they've assessed the situation. So they understood that nobody is able to do anything to them. For me, I think our security is so very weak. So, and in that situation, if it is still weak, there is no way you want to tell me that, oh, they're all on, I listen to every one of them, what they're all saying that, oh, yeah, we've done a great job. They will work collaboratively. There is nothing like collaboratively in this situation because they've done nothing. I'm just going to be honest with you. Not until we are able to say the truth to each other. When it comes to security, I can tell you they've done nothing. Because I witnessed, I'm looking at it, I was even watching it very closely. So they still have a lot to do. Even in time of their training, Can anyone tell me that they receive trainings they require for them to be on their feet, to safeguard the elections? No. No. So we have a long way to go. So when it comes to security, we have a lot of security without any firearms. There is no respect. All these hooligans. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Abiude, but we did, see some visuals there. We saw some of our police operatives actually, do their best to, quell the situation and, get back, some of those materials that were actually snatched. So, some of them did, do their best, even though we know there's still, room for improvement. But let's look at Beavers now and the whole technology of it. From your view, how did you see, the performance of Beavers, compared to the last election and the IREV?
You're referring to the security or to the INEC?
I'm actually talking about the technology now of Beavers.
Oh, the technology.
Exactly.
I mean, come on. Sometimes we want to praise what our current technology system is doing in Nigeria. Right now, when I need to grade them or to score them, I'm going to score them like 4 out of 10. Because you look at it the way things are going, it's still like encouraging voters fraud. We talked about Beavers the other time. We talked about without the electricity, the power, and without a very effective technology, it's going to be very difficult for them to have an effective elections, unless if we are only deceiving ourselves. So I really want us to get our mind out of they are trying, they're becoming good, there is room for improvement. How many years do we want to sit on the fact that there's still room for improvement? I can sit with them if I have to be someone on the table right now, and we have other committees. There are so many things we can do, and we can do it well, do it better. Let us forget about whether there's still room for improvement, because we've been on still room for improvement for many years, and we haven't even gotten anywhere. So for me,
the room for improvement is still growing at this point. Mr. Abegude, I know you're a politician. Looking at the politicians here and how they've conducted themselves, what's your assessment?
For me or for Dr. Mike?
No, for you, Mr. Abegude.
What was the question again?
So, I said that you're a politician, and, looking at how the candidates and politicians here, how they've conducted, themselves, what's your assessment? Because, they have, tried to, put some of their supporters, in check, telling them, to be peaceful and all of that. But, I want your own assessment of how they've conducted themselves.
Yeah, I would say this. Looking at all the people, the candidates, I mean, from what I've seen so far, majority of them are kind of indisciplined. Because when you are a candidate, their level of professionalism that is expected in you, but I really don't see that. So it's like we are driven by our economic situation. Most voters are driven by the economic situation, whereby because you can say there is no more of a, they are not selling they're not selling their vote, they're not selling this. But you can tell from even the rhetoric, the expressions from most candidates, the way they speak, you can tell that majority of them are not matured enough, even to run for an office, not to even being elected in. So they are not disciplined compared to what I see here. The assessment is there is none of my supporters that will go ahead and disrupt an election. It is never done. So it is a matter of discipline. But we don't see that, we don't speak the truth to each other. We see each other as enemy instead of us to see each other as friends. Of course, we can run for an election, and we can always be like a competitor, but that doesn't make us an enemy. So we choose to make our supporters enemy to each other. So the assessment that I would say in this regard is that we need to do more when it comes to us educating our supporters. Not until we're able to educate our supporters that don't let us see each other as enemies, but let's see each other as friends, because we are all running towards the same goal. It is Nigeria, all right? And we are running towards the same goal. So we still have a long way to go when it comes to working together and in terms of unity. So the way they've conducted themselves, it was a very, very ridiculous situation that is currently going on in Nigeria. See how they macheted some of the candidates. You know, we don't need that. We don't see that around here. I mean, people should learn from developed countries. We keep saying we're going to get there. When are we going to get there? When?
Well,
until we kill each other?
That's hopefully that is soon. But, you know, a lot of people would beg to disagree, you know, with your assessment, because these candidates have actually come out, you know, to sign peace accords, you know, come out to tell their supporters, you know, on numerous occasions that, you know, they should behave themselves. But like one of our panelists said earlier on, you know, it's election time. A lot of people get emotional, and sometimes there is the extent to which you would control, you know, how your supporters would behave. But let me just take this conversation to Dr. Mike. Dr. Mike, speaking about, you know, the conduct of the politicians during this exercise, you know, looking at the fact that, you know, they subjected themselves to signing peace accords and pacts, isn't that a step in the right direction, even though we saw pockets of violence, you know, in all of those places?
Of course. The signing of the peace accord is a step towards the right direction. It's a noble thing to do, but, you know, when it comes to Nigeria activities, they make it like a mumble jumble. Like, this is just for the camera? Because if that is not the case, I expected the leaders and principals of different political parties to orientate and reorientate their followers, their supporters. Because one thing about supporters, they see their figure, they see themselves in their whoever that is representing them or their candidates. So whatever that is coming out of the candidate's mouth, they take seriously, they follow through. Do you understand? So I'm not surprised there were pockets of violence here and there, because there are situations that even before elections that happen that you listen to people, to supporters of certain parties making very crazy and uncultured utterances, and there was no punishment, no arrest, no call to order. You know, of course, when such utterances are made, you expect the other followers to follow suit on the day of the election. So moving forward, I expect our candidates, our politicians, to carry themselves as noble as the office they are envisaging to
occupy. All right, very well. I have to say thank you for joining us, Dr. Michael Akitomi, as well as Kayode Abegunde, both of you joining us via Zoom from Delaware in the United States. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your thoughts as well. But quickly, Mr. Mori, just wrap this conversation for us, and talking about the courage of the politicians. How would you rate them? Quickly, we need to go.
We need to make public office less attractive. Public office is becoming, it's looking to, when you compare the cost of getting into public office and the legal remuneration that comes with that office, there's a very dangerous disparity. How do you bridge that gap? Do people spend billions just to come and help their country? These are some of the questions we need to ask. Public office needs to become less lucrative and more of service, and then you find
less expensive.
Yes, and the electioneering process needs to be less expensive, and because when it becomes less expensive, what happens is that you have a more qualitative aspiration amongst a larger number of people. who want to come in altruistically because they believe that they can make meaningful impact, and it wouldn't cost an arm and a leg. Right?
Some would say, I mean, like in the United States, that, you know, someone even said Hillary Clinton spent about $2 billion, you know, trying to...
Still a lot of heavy spending.
You know,
but you see, if you look at the electoral process in the US, it is highly regulated, and there is a very strict oversight as to how much single individuals can donate. So what you have are a large number of people pulling in resources. We don't have, yes, the Electoral Act places a peg on the election. I think 2 billion or so for presidential and 1 billion for presidential, 500 million for governorship. But it's not really, they don't have the clear parameters to really gauge how much is spent on the actual electioneering. Just imagine booking a private jet, right, and using it to fly around this country, paying for media time. You know, that alone in itself. Let's even not look at the black market aspect of this politics. You know, the legitimate approach to showcasing yourself to run for a presidential election in this country across the 36 states. The cost is huge.
Maybe when I was
actually
to run.
I was expecting you to say huge, and you know, Sabino's. I think this Sabino's. You know, he came to my mind. I'm like, you know, it's huge, it's humongous. It's quite
the Nigerian electoral office holder is the most powerful in the world, and that's dangerous. The amount, the latitude, the executive powers that are taken by these individuals need to be reduced. You know,
so that we have strong institutions. Gentlemen, we need to run now. It's been quite a very interesting conversation. Hopefully, you'll be running for election sometime soon. I'll be analyzing you. That's Mr. Mori Edogi-Awere. Maybe someday we'll talk about the Coalition for Nigeria movement. That conversation we'll have it in the future. Thank you so much for your time. He's a lawyer. Also joining us virtually, both of them from Delaware, actually. It's just about 1 a.m. there. We've had Dr. Michael Akitomi, founder, MAID Foundation, as well as Mr. Kayode Abegunde, former candidate, Delaware State Insurance Commissioner under Democratic Party in 2020. Gentlemen, it's good to have you on the show as well, and have a wonderful day ahead.